Good morning, everyone. I am presenting on exploring the microgravity of the space flight associated neuroocular syndrome. I have no any financial interest. The microgravity is referred as the zero gravity or the weightless. It is the condition in which the object appears to be free fall. In prolonged microgravity condition can lead to physiological changes in the astronauts, including the fluid shift in the body and the alternation of the all cellular functions. And the microgravity makes and create the environment in which the object and the individual appears in the nowhere, and the astronauts float freely inside the aircraft and the space station. It is understanding the effect of the microgravity, the crucial in the space mission, as effect of the design of the spacecraft, space habit, and the well-being of astronauts. Addressing these challenges is vital for the success of the human spaceflight endeavor, including the mission of the Moon and Mars. These are the important human health risks just mentioned here. Any alternation of the gravitational field can affect the body fluid shift, sense, space flight associated neuroocular syndromes, and the cardiovascular disease, muscle atrophy, bone loss, and in the close environment like hostile in the aircraft just induce the condition of the high concentration of the CO2. It affect the toxic exposure, renal stone formation, decrease the immune system because they also decrease the appetite of the astronauts. The lack of the biological day and night because the environmental day doesn't match with the biological day. So it creates the artificial day and night of the 12 hours light followed by the 12-hour dark. The space radiation is just created the high ionic ray. This ion creates the high magnetic field surrounding the spacecraft. And inside and outside, they produce the electromagnetic wave that creates the radiation exposure, and this makes the skin cancer. The high risk of the nervous system, sensory motor, and the oxidative stress. The changes the food physiology like the high radiation just change the calorific value of the nutrients. The isolation that creates the cognitive and behavioral impacts. Sleep disorder due to the high turbulence inside the spacecraft. Mental health challenges may be the isolation and the communication gap between the family members and the friends. They just introduce the anxiety and the other issues. The microgravity for the space, this is a comprehensive overview of the entire human space research, include the research focus, risk reduction, standard development of the SOPs, and the research requirement, evidence-based approaches. The microgravity and just affect the short-term physiological alteration and the long-term physiological alteration when the astronaut goes beyond the low Earth orbits. The short-term physiological alteration depends upon the central fluid shifts, create the nasal and the sinus congestion, headaches, and the motion sickness, back pain, and anxiety. The long-term physiological alternation after the beyond the Earth orbits, they introduce the space flight associated neuroocular syndrome, bone density loss, reduced kidney function, and the muscle weakness. The following categorize the steps of the going the moon to the Mars. These levels are the level 1 is the Earth. This is simulated space flight hazard. Basically, this is the microgravity and the other artificial experiment will be done on the Earth. The low Earth orbit may be test bed of the study of the microgravity, environmental hazard, and any environmental behavioral issues. Commercial flight vehicle available in the commercial in a space station like International Space Station and the European Space Stations. The moon mission is also provide the insight into the deep space radiations on the gateway of the human landing and the lunar and the rover landings. The space flight associated neuroocular syndrome include this is the induced visual impairment and the intracranial pressures. It is the condition observed the astronaut who spend the extended periods of microgravity, typically during the long duration of the space mission. It described as the ocular and the nuclear changes, that occurs as the results of the exposure of the microgravity environments. The primary factor of the redistributing of the body fluids in the microgravity, including the blood and the cerebrospinal fluids. However, the microgravity is the absence of gravity-driven hydrostatic pressure leads the fluid shifted towards the upper part of the body. The primary indication of the sense include the visual impairment, optic disc edema, retinal changes, eye globe deformity, increase the intercranial pressures. In the visual impairment, they just develop the blur vision, contrast sensitivity, binocularity, and the decrease the asteopsis. Also, the causes the optic disc edema, retinal changes like the floaters and the rainbow visions, and deform the ocular structure due to the high pressure generated by the upper or body fluids. The secondary indication like the ocular surface disease, the dry eye and the corneal ectasia, visual field just introduced by the high pressure cerebrospinal fluid just changes the optic disc sizes, increase the intraocular pressures, corneal and retinal angiogenesis, defect of the color vision due to the high loss of photoreceptor cells in the high radiations. The fundoscopy reveals the post and peri and the post flight changes in the fundus. The pressure generated by the cerebrospinal fluid on the disc of optic increase the intraocular pressures, and this glow flattening introduce the hyperopic shift. The most of the astronauts is hyperopic after the missions. The develop the choroidal folds and the cotton wool spot after the post-flight missions. The main hypothesis of the science proposed the alternation of the cerebrospinal fluid dynamics and the dysregulation of the intracranial pressure. It plays the significant role of the development of the ocular and the neurological manifestations, and the rationals and the supporting factors like the intracranial pressure, optic nerve compression, cerebral vascular regulation, microgravity induced fluid shift from the lower part to the upper part, and the tear proteomics like the changes of the tear biomarkers and the TS protein during the space flight. Some kinds of the epigenetic and the genetic variation will be possible due to the high radiations, and the changes of the oral and the ocular microbiome due to the alternation of the microbiota. The hypothesis can be investigated by the following range of the experimental approach: the space-based study on the human model, and the ground-based study of the parabolic flight maneuvers. The astronauts can undergo the comprehensive ocular examination pre-flight, in-flight, and the post-flight. This is the upright condition where the body fluid moves towards the leg, and the microgravity condition if the body fluid moves towards the upper side. The head tilt based model with the gravity leads the displacement of the blood towards the upper part of the body, and since there is no weight bearing and no any leg muscle activities, the parabolic flight maneuvers generally used by the European space stations and the International Space Station of the NASA, and these use the parabolic pathway. The aircraft move the minimum velocity of the 6 km per hour above the 7,500 meters with the nose angle of the 45 to 50 degree, and just reach up the 8 to 900 meters in the parabolic condition, and they come back with again come back with the same nose angle and the same speed. These parabolic conditions thus provide us the free gravity, in the microgravity. So they provide the microgravity environment to conduct the research without going into the space. Another animal model, this is the mice model generally used by the NASA and the other European station. The model exposed the simulated microgravity condition, provide the insight into the effect of the alternation of CSF dynamics and the ICP dysregulation. It also helps the underlying the mechanism of the sense to contribute the development of the preventive and the therapeutic interventions. And the rodent kept in the cage with the hind limb not touching in the case at least the 2 months to provide the microgravity conditions. Another the aquatic model is the zebra fish model. It helps the human to reach the Mars. It also helps to understand the forms of hibernation, may provide the radio protective effect. The hibernation habits maybe teach us how the land or food on the Mars. The 70% of the human gene are found in the zebrafish, and the many and the same physiological features. The zebrafish embryo are also laid and fertilized externally, which allow them to easily manipulated. The embryo is transparent and the clear, which allow the researchers to fertilize egg grow into the baby under the microscope. The fertilized egg can be easily manipulated by injected by the DNA and RNA permanently and modify the genetic makeup in order to generate a transgenic zebrafish. Another is the fruit fly, like the Drosophila is the widely used in the model organ of the genetic and the molecular study. It also helps the preventing the treatment of the human disease and the protecting the astronauts' health. The Drosophila have the genome of the 60% homologous with the human and the 75% of the gene responsible for the human disease. The study of the reproductive function under the long term of the space flight conditions is interested in the planning of the explorers of the deep space. The research finding of the Drosophila shows the sperm motility speed after the space flight reduce in respect of the control. These results can be very useful for the developing the study for the protecting the reproductive health of the astronauts. The finding possible outcomes, if the hypothesis is supported, it would provide the valuable insight of the mechanism and the understanding of the science. It helps to guide up the various aspects, develop the effective measurement, countermeasure to mitigate the nature of the effects, understanding the role of the CSF dynamic and the ICP dysregulation, and its broader implication of the ocular neurologic conditions. It is important to the note that these hypotheses represent the potential explanation of the space flight associated nuclear ocular syndrome. Further research is needed to validate and refine our understandings. The following strategies to mitigate the sense is depending upon the vision assessment, the regular monitoring and assessment of the astronauts' eye and the vision health, the maintaining the proper hydration of the fluid to optimize the cardiovascular function and the proper blood flow. The countermeasure exercises will be recommended to the majority of the astronauts. Experience a variety of health and the physical changes while living in the space. They can perform the specific exercises focusing on the head, neck, and the eyes. The exercise aim to promote the blood flow, muscle, and strength and blood coordinations. The glimpse into the future translational research based on the human research space divided into two arms. In the left arm of the space biology is the science exploring the unknown risk, whereas the right hand and the human research program the science addressing the known risk. The space biology is to study how the life respond, adapt, and develop, interact, and involve the space environment. It is based on the more basic molecular, cellular, and the tissue study, microbial and interaction, and development of the evolutionary and biology and the omics study like the proteomics, genomics, and the metabolomics. And the human research program basically based on to more applied to identify the mitigate the risk of the human health and exploring the medical capability, rehabilitation, and the treatment, behavioral health, and the performance of to mitigate the mental health issues, physical countermeasures, space human factors and its implications. Take home message: the science is recognized the condition that affects the astronauts during and after the space missions. The monitoring and the early detection of the crucial for the health. It is a multifactorial condition. Several potential contribution factors, including the oxidative state and genetic susceptibility. the long-distance space mission, if a certain individual faces the specific genetic variations. The ongoing research is focuses on the better understanding of the risk factor, developing the preventing measure and the potential or therapeutic interventions. The exact underlying mechanism are the not yet fully understand. However, it is the belief to the result from the effect of prolonged exposure of the microgravity. This is the poster presentation. I am presenting in the NASA conference this year on the tear proteomics approach, identify the tear film biomarkers. Another presentation is the understanding the impact of the microgravity of the astronaut vision and presenting the ISRO symposium of this year. So thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Dr. Ramkishore. So Dr. Ramkishore is a scientist in the RP Center. And if you listen carefully, you would have learned a little bit about space physiology, which is actually part of your curriculum. Yes. So if you open your textbooks, you will find space physiology, which is going to come in your second semester. And that is in the course. And the Department of Physiology over here, under Dr. K.K. Deepak, had an entire lab for studying space physiology. And that continues, I think, with Dr. Dinu and others in the department. Okay, so you are all getting refreshment boxes. Have it, enjoy it. And then your lunar mission is going to be in the dissection hall on the gluteal region. Okay, and please finish it and ensure that these boxes and whatever waste material is thrown in a garbage bin and not here and there. You're responsible medical students. I hope you're not going to be littering it anywhere. Okay, thank you. So after this, you go down to the dissection hall.